it's a common fallacy, and I think a lot of people struggle through it. I could see the Spirit not as a threat because, I don't know, I never really was threatened by him. And I could see Christ as not a threat because I could see that he died for me. Although a lot of what he said I find difficult, maybe even a little harsh. But God the Father, oh man, if you've got an image in your mind of God as a young man, an old man in a bird, and the old man's got a lightning bolt, that's harrowing, and that's too common. So, how is it that Jesus said, "Come to me, you who are weak and heavy laden, and I will give you rest in your souls," if he's the son of a God that's just vindictive and really spiteful? Does that make it, have you all struggled with that at all? Have you seen this? Well, what we want to do tonight is what Paul said. We want to preach Christ. We want to preach Jesus. And to know him a little better. In Timothy, 1 Timothy 3:16 says, God was manifest in the flesh. God. There's only one God. God was manifest in the flesh, justified in the Spirit, seen of angels, preached unto the world, believed on, and received up into glory. Which I didn't read that, so I paraphrased. God was manifest in the flesh. The gospel initially went out to the Jews. Salvation is to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. If you tell a Jew God or Lord, the Jews are extremely monotheistic. Deuteronomy 6:4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. The Lord is one. There's only one God. The New Testament, if the world would be lords many, gods many, but to us there's one Lord and his name one. In John 1:1, it says the Word was with God and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made by him. Well, if there's only one God, and yet we see Father, Son, and Spirit, then that's nonsensical maybe. I think that's why Paul wrote to Timothy, great is the mystery of godliness. It's a mystery. It's hard to understand. Paul said that when you get into the deeper spiritual ideas, you can't compare the spiritual with the carnal. You have to compare the spiritual with the spiritual. But as it turns out on this Trinity thing versus the oneness idea, in modern history and psychology, if you've taken any of that, you know that you have right brain and left brain. So if I was damaged here, I'll have left hand. My left side would be part of the control because primary control of the left is in the right. And likewise, left controls the right. So you can see that you are made in God's image. You have a right and a left. You talk to yourself. What is a line of thought? If you're trying to reason through something, it's conversation. You may even refer to yourself in the plural. We did this, we did that. Right? Well, in between the right brain and the left brain, you've got this membrane called the corpus callosum. This thing would be comparable to the switchgear of a telephone company. If you get damage to that thing, the disease that results is epilepsy because the two halves don't communicate. Well, we see Father, Son, Spirit. Y'all with me? So you can see even physically within yourself how, well, my right brain is my left brain, but it really isn't. But if you're like me and you have substantial injuries to your brain, you find that over time it can reroute. Because you could say, well, the right brain's me and the left brain's me, but they're kind of both me. And they both can do the same thing. Sort of like Jesus said, I'm going away and you're sad, but it's expedient for you that I leave, because when I leave, the Father will send you another comforter, which is the Holy Spirit. But then later on in the same passage in John, you see him saying, I will send you another comforter. Well, wait a second, I thought you said the Father was sending it. I did, because there's only one God. So I guess what I'm giving you tonight's piece of very orthodox Trinity thought. I know from talking to my grandma, who was, I guess about 90 at the time, that in her life, she saw one throne. And in her generation, I think it was because of the way the preaching was done, they saw one throne. she was kind of more Methodist than Baptist. My granddad was a Baptist, but they both saw one throne. She was a Baptist too, because they were wrong. Well, if you consider that the same attributes are from the Father to the Son, from the Son to the Father, then could you say that the Father is the Son? Could you? I think you could. I mean, there's only one God. But then you can say that's an inaccurate statement, and that would be right too, because great is the mystery of godliness. Let's look at the fact that Jesus is God. If you get Jehovah's Witnesses, they come and knock on your door. And in all honesty, if you're not ready for them, you're probably better off not to even talk to them. Because trust me, they're loaded for bear. Now, if you're like me and you can't remember the references, it's great. Because you can hit them with your scriptural arguments, and they'll tell you where it is, because they study this stuff more than you do. But they think that they see God the Father, and then they see a created being named Jesus. And they think that that being is the mighty God, the Son of God. When Jesus was on trial before Pontius Pilate said, "Do you want Jesus," which is Yahshua, which is Jehovah who saves us? Remember when the angel went to Mary, he said, "You're going to name this child Jesus, Jehovah who saves us, Yahshua, because he will save his people from their sins." But that was an admission that he was God. Isaiah 7:14, "Behold, a virgin shall conceive, and you'll call his name Emmanuel." Emmanuel, God with us. Not the second person of the Trinity with us. Or the mighty God, the lesser God, the exalted man, or the highest created being. No. Emmanuel, God with us. There's only one God. 1 John 5:7, if you're lucky enough to have a King James Bible, says there are three that bear record in heaven. There are three that bear record in heaven: the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit. Well, if you're really hardcore, they call themselves apostolics. If you're really hardcore apostolic, that verse is troublesome. And yet, if you're 21st century Trinitarian, that verse is also trouble, because there is only one God. There are three that bear record in heaven: the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit, and these three are one. There's only one God. Well, did Jesus claim to be God? He did. He said, Philip was all upset. He said, "Lord, if you'll just show us the Father, it sufficeth us. If you'll just show me God the Father, I'll be okay." And Jesus' response was, "Philip, have I been with you this long, you don't know me? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." Literal answer to the literal question. Jesus is the Father. And yet you can say, Jesus is the Son. Well, why would that need to be so? If you go back to Isaiah 14:12, "How art thou fallen from heaven, Lucifer, son of the morning?" It goes on to describe the end of Lucifer, the light bearer, the most exalted archangel, in the beginning of his existence as Satan, which is what we know him as. If you look at what he did, he said, "I'll exalt myself." Basically, I want to be like God, I want to be worshipped. And a third of the angels fell. Did you ever consider how that could be? I mean, what do you tell them? Angels are, it says they're mightier in power than we are. What kind of an argument, what did they see that a third of them water? Well, I think it may have gone like this. Lucifer said, "Wait a second, let me get this right. I want to be worshipped, but you always get worshipped. And I want to sit in the throne. You sit in the throne. I just want people to think highly of it. You demand that people think highly of you. So I want to do what you want me to do, and you're going to throw me into hell forever, and yet you're going to still be God. I think you're everything you say you hate. I think you're entirely self-centered. It's all about you. And a third of the angels went, I've been watching God for a long time.